Colossus is the most advanced lineup optimizer in daily fantasy sports. Lock and exclude players. Adjust player exposure to reduce risk of injury or poor performance. Customize individual projections or upload your own projections. Generate hundreds of optimal lineups in seconds. Name and save the best lineups. Create winning lineups for the top sites like DraftKings and FanDuel for free at dailyfantasycafe.com.
Hello and welcome to the DraftKings Daily Trot. I'm Big Italy 42 here talking about tonight's action. And we've got a lot of good pitchers on the mound here, so if you're paying up, you got some tough decisions. Obviously, I'll say this, if there's one more day that you're going to be playing MLB DFS, maybe you've given up, maybe you weren't much of a player anyway, if there's one more day you've got to play, the rest of the short amount of time that's left, a few weeks it is now, a little bit less than a month, it's got to be tonight. You got a $20 buy-in, $1 million first place on DraftKings tonight, and you got a lot of new people who are either just NFL players are going to try their hand at some baseball tonight, or people who haven't played anything and just tried NFL, got some winnings, they're going to go out there. So a lot of ways to exploit some matchups tonight and take advantage and make some money. So I'm going to start off here at the top with the top pitchers on the mound, and Jacob deGrom, $11,900 against Miami. Miami, as we know, a bottom feeder offense, one of the worst in all of baseball. Depending on WOBA, ISO, whatever you want to look at, I mean, they're cellar dwellers in pretty much every category. DeGrom's a minus 250 favorite and a 7-run total, so he's your chalk play, and rightfully so. I mean, he didn't have a great performance against this same team last time he faced them 2 starts ago. It was a quality start, but you're not looking for a quality start when you're paying $12K for your pitcher. It was only 10.1 DK points. Certainly not going to scare me away from him, but if I'm paying up for one pitcher and I can only afford one and I have to make a decision between he and Steven Strasburg, I'm going Steven Strasburg more often than not. He seems still more like a GPP play, but if you look at what Steven Strasburg is, what Vegas is saying for Steven Strasburg, he's a minus 240 favorite. It is an 8.5 run total, but a lot of that due to the fact that the Nationals are a huge favorite and Nationals expect to do some damage. And outside of getting hit by Miami, yes, Strasburg has given up 5 home runs in his last 3 starts, but he's also struck out 23 batters in those starts in just over 17 innings. So 13 Ks and 7 1/3 last time out against the Mets. There's a Philly team that is among the worst in all of baseball against right-handed pitching, just like the Marlins are. So it's a tough decision between the two, but saving over 2K, I prefer Strasburg slightly. If they're similarly priced, I think DeGrom's safer, but Strasburg certainly with more upside, if you ask me. Felix Hernandez is a guy that has pitched well against the Angels all season long. Finally put together 2 good performances in a row. 3 straight 8-inning performances. Oakland, and Texas in those. Gets the Angels at home here. He has had some issues with walks, had 4 in his last game. Had some issues with home runs there as well. But this is a guy that we know when he has it going, still one of the best pitchers in all of baseball. And while his numbers over the course of the season aren't what you'd like them to be, 23.5% strikeout rate, not what you're thinking in ace terms, but over the past month, he's been almost exactly what his numbers are for the season. 11.5% swing and strike rate, 24% hard hit rate, 55.3% ground ball rate. This is the Felix Hernandez that we've all known and loved. I think he's going to go lower owned tonight, so I think he's a great tournament option. Another guy to look at in your tournaments, Jake Odorizzi. He's $10,000. Facing off against the Yankees. Yankees not normally a team you want to target, but fortunately they're in Tropicana Field, not at Yankee Stadium. 7.5 run total. He's the smallest of favorites at minus 120. But this is a guy that does have some upside. Pitched great against the Tigers last time out, and I know it's the Tigers offense that has been struggling recently, but over the last 30 days, aside from Adam Warren, who's only pitched 12 innings and not been starting, we're talking starting pitchers alone on the pitchers on tonight's slate. Behind only Steven Strasburg in strikeout rate, 26.9%, tied with John Lamb there. He has given up more fly balls than you like, but that's kind of been the deal with Odorizzi throughout his entire career. 48.1%. You don't like at all, but, I mean, on the same token, Steven Strasburg allowing a 51.7% fly ball rate. So, certainly risk with him, but I think he'll be low owned. He's a great target. Another guy, Pittsburgh is a team that has a lot of guys that can hit left-handed pitching well, but John Lester is also a very, very good elite pitcher. Pittsburgh strikes out a ton against left-handed pitching, more so than they do against against righties. And when you look at John Lester's numbers over the past 30 days, he's been good. I mean, hasn't been dominant necessarily. 22.1% strikeout rates, 46% ground ball rate. Those numbers aren't great, but this is a guy that has a ton of upside, and we know that this is a huge game for the Cubs. We've seen John Lester pitch very well in these situations before, so not a guy I'm going to be playing a ton of, but certainly a guy to consider in your tournaments. Another guy to consider, Carlos Martinez. He doesn't have much upside, really hasn't shown it at all. In fact, just 2 games in his last 9 here of over 20 points on DraftKings. But it's a Milwaukee offense that really, outside of Ryan Braun, every once in a while, Crush Davis has those big games. They're just not a good offense. And it's, 8-run total, minus 175 favorite. You wish that he was at Busch Stadium and not at Miller Park for this one. But he's a guy that you can certainly consider as well. As we look at cheap guys here, cheaper guys, I should say. John Lamb's the guy who's been striking out a ton of batters, as I mentioned. 26.9% over the past 30 days. He's also been walking way too many. He walked 6 in his last start. Certainly concerning, but if you're playing John Lamb at $7,900, you're not worrying about the walk rate. You're playing him, hoping that he catches fire and wins you $1 million tonight. 9% walk rate over that same span, but swing strike rate over 10. So this is certainly a guy that has upside. He also, though, has not pitched through 6 innings in any of his starts, so keep that in mind. Not a guy you're expecting to go out and pitch an 8-inning gem, but it's certainly possible. But I'm not holding my breath for that one. Incredible park shift for him, though, at AT&T instead of Great American, so that's nice for him. Jeff Samardzija is a guy I want to look at against Oakland, but they don't strike out a lot. He has been just awful. Allowed at least 1 home run, and 8 of his last 9 starts now, multiple home runs in 3 of those. I just don't like that. If this game was in Oakland, maybe, but for me, I mean, I'm passing on him. A guy that's been pitching well, but I won't be targeting really, Joe Kelly at Baltimore. It's a tough matchup at Baltimore. Yes, he has faced some other tough teams in similar situations recently. And yes, he has been very good over the past month. But it's still a guy that just does not have much upside. 15% strikeout rate over the last month. Almost a 9% walk rate. I think, I'm not going to say more risk than reward, but I don't think he has a whole lot of upside even at that price tag. So for me, that's still a pass. And then your cheap guys. Chris Medlin against Cleveland. Medlin's a guy who we keep expecting big things out of. We know he has been an upside type of starter before, and he induced a lot of ground ball outs, but this is a Cleveland team that doesn't strike out much, and you don't know how much run support he's going to get because Josh Tomlin on the other side has pitched well. Tomlin not a guy that I'm playing tonight, but definitely a guy that has some upside, so you can consider that. But really, he's a filler type of guy. When you get in that big, expensive stack you like with one of your top pitchers, you throw him in, and you hope that he does decent for you. Moving over to catcher options here, Travis d'Arnaud gets Tom Kohler. Tom Kohler is a guy that isn't awful, isn't great. I mean, he's pretty much average against righties, 311 WOBA allowed in the season, so that's a guy that you can pick on. I still like the Mets tonight. They got a nice team total, so I'll be looking at them. Buster Posey gets the lefty, and John Lamb, who I mentioned earlier. He's the main guy I'm going to target if I'm going to be picking on John Lamb. Obviously, this game in San Francisco, not in Cincinnati, so not quite as much upside for offenses, but certainly if Lamb's out there walking 6 guys, then we could see some big upside from these Giants batters. Other guys to look at, Brian McCann against Jake Odorizzi. I mentioned Odorizzi's struggles with keeping the ball in the ground, and he actually has been good against left-handed batters, though, this season. Actually very good, 267 WOBA, but we're talking tournament plays, guys you can play in these big tournaments. McCann, nowhere near a cash game play, but $3,700, a guy that I'll consider there. Another guy that you could be looking at here, if for some reason we see Steven Vogt in, I love him tonight against Samardzija in that spot as a lefty at U.S. Cellular. I don't expect he's going to play, but I'm going to throw that name out there just in case he does return today. It doesn't seem like there's really a timetable for his return here. And then as you're going for cheap guys, 2 guys stand out to me. If you're looking for cheap cash game play, it's got to be John Jaso against Adam Warren. I don't care if he's batting first or fourth, wherever he is. I love him as a cheap cash game guy. And then your upside guy, Sal Perez. Josh Tomlin has given up 10 home runs in 6 starts so far. So a guy that, yes, he has pitched well, but he has struggled with the long ball. First base options for you. Joey Votto is a lefty against Chris Heston. Chris Heston struggles big time with lefties. 352 WOBA allowed on the season. So Votto in play for me there. Chris Davis, you're always considering him, especially at home. And like I mentioned, Joe Kelly's been pitching well. Maybe that keeps his ownership level down. I'm sure that $5,600 price tag isn't going to hurt either. David Ortiz against Ubaldo Jimenez, also in Baltimore. A great play there. I don't love Goldschmidt against Ross. Goldschmidt has been okay recently. He's been fine. But at 5K, Tyson Ross is really tough on right-handed batters, and he just doesn't allow home runs. 262 WOBA allowed, only 3 home runs in 91 innings to righties. And I just don't think that's the spot where I'll be paying for him. Guys are considering tournaments. Jose Abreu would love against Aaron Brooks. Hasn't really been good against anyone. Miggy, of course, against Phil Hughes, fly ball pitcher. I absolutely love that. I feel like this is the night that Miguel Cabrera can finally get it going. Phil Hughes just not a guy that I'm avoiding at all. Carlos Martinez's biggest weakness is lefties, so Adam Lynn certainly in play at home at Miller Park for you there. And then as we're looking at cheaper guys, I like Eric Hosmer at $4,000 against Josh Tomlin. Once again, mentioned Tomlin has been fine. He's been a good pitcher, but giving up too much hard contact, so I like that. Lucas Duda, if you're going with the Mets there still, I think he's an okay option. And then Mitch Moreland at $3,600. Colin McHugh, his strikeouts were up. Now they're starting to slide back down. Hasn't been bad against lefties at all. 274 WOBA out, been very good, but I do expect some runs to be scored in this one, so he's certainly a guy on my radar. Second base options here. Jose Altuve gets a lefty, and Derek Holland at $4,500. That always puts him squarely in play for me. Brian Dozier, you prefer lefties against Simon, but Simon hasn't been great against anyone recently, so Dozier in play. Not a guy I like paying that price tag for, though. Ian Kinsler at Minnesota against Hughes. Hasn't done much recently either, but I do think that Detroit stack could be an interesting one here. Ben Zobrist from the left side against Tomlin. I like him. He's been hitting much better from the left side of the plate. It's $4,000. I think that the KC stack is another one of those. They always seem to be under the radar, though, even when they do have a great matchup. And then a guy that I think will be popular, but great cash game play, Anthony Rendon at $3,700. Same goes for Robinson Cano at $37 against Nick Tropiano. Cano's been another one of those kind of streaky runs for him recently. He's been pretty good. Justin Turner at $3,600 is fine. He's cheap. A lot of the Dodgers are cheap here. I don't love the spot for him. Chris Russin's been a guy that's been hit pretty hard, though, by righties especially. 365 WOBA allowed. So I'm definitely looking at guys like Turner if you need a little bit of value there. Rugi Odor, another lefty, against Colin McHugh at $3,300. I think he's in a really good spot there as well. Jed Jerko gets a lefty, $3,200. This guy smashes lefties. Been hitting fairly well recently. That's my big upside play there for cheap that I'll be going after at second base. Third base options, there's a lot of expensive ones. Josh Donaldson and Julio Teheran. We know Teheran better against righties, also better at home. I don't avoid Toronto bats against anything but the most elite of pitchers, and I don't consider Julio Teheran to be an elite pitcher, as you know from watching me. So I'm not saying I'm going to be stacking against him, but certainly some spots where I don't mind targeting him. Nolan Arenado against the lefty, and Brett Anderson at the Dodgers. Arenado's a guy that's always in play for me. It's $5,200. He has been better against righties than lefties this year, but as we know, Brett Anderson, a guy that he's an adequate pitcher, but certainly not a guy that misses a ton of bats. Manny Machado, you can look at against Joe Kelly, but if I'm paying $5,100, there's some other bats I'd prefer. I think Miguel Sano's the guy that really stands out here at $4,900 against Simon. Once again, it's a righty, not a lefty, but I certainly like that. And then if Ryan Zimmerman's back, he's in play for me at $4,700 against Buchanan. All the Washington bats are. If he's not, you got guys like Clint Robinson that'll step in, and they'll be just fine. Chris Bryant is an option against J.A. Happ. Happ has pitched very, very well somehow, but, I mean, this isn't a rookie just coming in and dominating. We've seen J.A. Happ around for years. This is not a guy that I assume is going to maintain pitching as well as he has recently. So be a believer, be a non-believer, whatever you want to do there. I'm not avoiding the Cubs bats tonight. Kyle Seager is a lefty against Nick Tropiano. Nick Tropiano has been below average against lefties. Not terrible, but also a very small sample size there. So I like him as well. Alex Rodriguez against a fly ball pitcher. I'll play him against any fly ball pitcher. 31 homers on the year, just continues to hit for power. So you got to love him there. And then as you're going for cheaper guys, David Wright at 4K is a fine option. Scrolling all the way down for some more options. There's not a whole lot. I mean, you can play Rendon here, Turner as well, both those guys. I still like Danny Valencia as a sneaky play against the righty and Samardzija. We know he's been better against lefties, but this guy's been hitting everyone, so I like him. Travis Shaw is a cheap play that's been showing a ton of upside as well at $3,400. Probably the cheapest that I'll be going at the hot corner there. Shortstop options, of course, Carlos Correa going to be your top option against the lefty. Not a whole lot of analysis necessary there. Tons of hard contact, tons of ISO, high WOBA there as well against lefties. Great spot for him. Lindor against Medlin. Lindor's just been smashing the ball recently. The guy's been doing it all, stealing bases, hitting for power. You absolutely have to love him in this matchup. Jose Reyes, not a guy really on my radar. As I'm scrolling down here, surely you know by now Troy Tulowitzki is out. That $3,900 price tag would be nice, but obviously we're going to skip through him. He's out for at least a few weeks at this point. Other guys, Jung Ho Kang, if you're going to play a Pittsburgh bat in the infield, that's the guy I'll be playing against John Lester. Hits lefties well. Like I said, not trying to pick on Lester, but he and one more guy will get to the outfield, or two more guys, will be my targets if I am. And then as you go down cheap, Eduardo Escobar just continues to smash the ball. Shout out to Spencer Limbach there, $3,200. He's great. If Marwin Gonzalez is in the lineup, he had a swollen finger, $3,100. You know I love him as a cheap punt play there as well. Didi Gregorius continues to hit the ball pretty well at $3,100. He's going to bat down order, though, so keep that in mind if you're going to roster him. And then now, finally, move to the outfield. A lot of big options here. Bryce Harper against David Buchanan, who is quite possibly the worst pitcher on this slate. And by quite possibly, I mean he's absolutely the worst pitcher on this slate. He's allowing a .438 WOBA to left-handed batters. Bryce Harper, easily my top play in the outfield if you're paying up. But Yoenis Cespedes, not far behind. This guy's just been absolutely on fire. It seems like every single night he's homering, and that's not much of an exaggeration because he has homered a ton recently. Get a fly ball pitcher against Jose Bautista. I don't care what park that's in. He's going to be in play for me as well at 54. I do like Lorenzo Cain with some power against the righty. Obviously, he's more targeted against lefties, but like I said, Josh Tomlin's allowing too many home runs, and Lorenzo Cain certainly has some big-time upside there. Mookie Betts, another guy with some upside, but I don't feel great about paying $5,100 for him. You can consider these White Sox lefties, Eaton and Melky Cabrera, of course. I do like the San Diego righties, Kemp and Justin Upton as some sneaky tournament plays. I won't be stacking the whole Padre lineup, but I think that's a great play. Andrew McCutchen and Starling Marte are the other two guys that hit lefties very well that I'm mentioning against John Lester. Marte, though, day-to-day right now, they said that he's expected to be in the lineup, so hopefully he is in the lineup. We'll see. They said he's sitting out the early game, should be playing tonight, so make sure he's in, obviously, but looks like he's on the right side of playing. Curtis Granderson, another guy, another Mets bat. You get Adam Jones against Joe Kelly. Jason Hayward's got almost a 400 WOBA over the last 30 days, and he's been doing it all, so you got to consider him and his matchup against Ariel Pena, making just his second start ever. And then other guys to consider, JD Martinez, another Tigers bat against a fly ball pitcher. He still quietly has 36 home runs this season, so keep him on your radar. Ben Zobrist, Troy mentioned, I love him. He's 4K. I think he's a fine spot as well. And then as you're going for cheaper guys, I'm still going to throw out Franklin Gutierrez if he's in the lineup. The guy is just hitting for a ton of power. Absolutely love him. Mark Canha, another one of those guys that not a lot of people talk about, but he's been having a great month or so recently. His teammate Josh Reddick is a lefty against Jeff Samardzija. We mentioned Samardzija struggles against lefties. A guy who does not struggle against lefties, Marlon Byrd, facing off against his old team in San Francisco and gets a lefty in Byrd and John Lamb. So you got to like him there as well. Looking down even cheaper for some other guys to fill out your rosters with. And there's not a lot of cheap plays that I love, but get Jay Bruce as a lefty against Chris Heston. Heston has some big-time struggles with lefties. Gregory Polanco's in a lefty-lefty matchup against Lester. I don't love that, but Lester gives up a ton of stolen bases. You get on, your mom gets on, anybody gets on the base, your dog. They steal second base with ease because John Lester is seemingly incapable of keeping runners on first base. So doesn't matter who gets on there. They're looking to go. So he's in a great spot. Michael Kadire, if he's in the lineup, $3,100. Very, very cheap for a piece of that Mets team. You got to like that. And then scrolling down even further, Justin Ruggiano, if he's leading off, this guy's been incredible since coming over to the Dodgers. $2,800. Great deal for him there. And then all the way down here at the bottom, another Dodger, Scott Van Slyke gets a lefty at $2,600. You always consider him. Of course, he's a potential to get platooned out later, but you're hoping that you get your production before he's out. Definitely a guy with some big-time upside in that matchup. And then scrolling all the way down here to the bottom, looking for some more value plays. There's really not a lot that stands out. If Tyler Moore is in the lineup against David Buchanan, he could be a cheap play. I don't really expect that he will be, but if Ryan Zimmerman's out, it's a possibility that he's in the lineup. So give him a look as a min-salary guy just in case. And that's going to wrap things up. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out a lot of great content for MLB, NFL, college football, even PGA at dailyfantasycafe.com.